Hi, my name is Amy and I work at King Arthur Flour. I'm here with my daughter Grace and welcome back to our kitchen. You are still home this week, we're still home this week, so let's bake. Today we're going to make one of my favorite recipes. You can find it on our website. It's the 100% whole wheat blueberry muffin recipe. They're going to be delicious. So we're getting ready to bake. So the first thing we do is we read our recipe all the way through 2 times so we know what to do. So we have gotten out all of our ingredients and our tools. Grace is going to preheat the oven to 400 degrees. We've taken off everything off of our hands, we've pulled our hair back, we've put on our apron, and we've washed our hands really well. The first ingredient we're going to add for our muffins is white whole wheat. As we're doing this, you're going to notice that we're going to put all of our dry ingredients in one bowl and then our wet ingredients in a second bowl and then combine them. If you were baking bread with us last week, you noticed this will be the same kind of flour. So for King Arthur flour, to measure correctly, we're going to take this out of our bag, put it into our container, and then there are 3 steps to measuring really good flour. We're going to fluff, sprinkle, and sweep. So Grace has her scoop, her measuring cups, and the straight edge of the knife to measure 2.5 cups of flour. I know that right now, some of us are having a hard time finding flour on our grocery shelves. So please know that at King Arthur, we're working as hard and fast as we can to get our flour to your shelves and fulfill all the orders that you've made with us. And we really appreciate your patience. With this recipe, as well as others when you're baking, if you don't have a particular ingredient, there's often substitutions you can make. So if you don't have an ingredient and you want to make a substitution, I have 3 tips for you. The first one is to read the recipe all the way through. Often at the bottom of the recipe, the baker who made the recipe will sometimes give you ideas for things you can substitute. Also, go to our webpage. We have so many articles and blogs. I bet if you enter in that ingredient, we might have some information for you. And then the other thing that you can do is to contact our baker's hotline. So we have bakers waiting to talk to you. You can either call them or you can chat with them and ask them your baking question. Perfect. All right, so that's our 2.5 cups of flour. So we have our flour. The next ingredient is 1 cup of brown sugar packed. And we're going to measure it just the way it's described. We're going to pack it into our measuring cup. Remember, the secret to great baking is accurately measuring your ingredients. So with white sugar, we scoop to overflowing and level off. With brown sugar, take your measuring cup, scoop way down. And what you're going to do this time is you're just going to take your hand and you're going to pack the sugar in. I'm actually going to add a little bit more so I know I have a full cup. Get your hands on the sugar, which is always good. And then just going to plop it right into your bowl. The next 4 ingredients in our recipe I have already pre-measured. We have salt, baking soda, baking powder, and cinnamon. So I'm going to pour those in. Grace, why don't you grab a fork? And she's going to go ahead and just lightly combine those ingredients. And once they're combined, we're going to add in a cup of frozen berries. You can use frozen berries, you can use fresh berries, blueberries, raspberries, any kind of berries you have are going to be great. I often mention this recipe to kids when I am out teaching at schools, and someone always raises their hand and asks if they can put chocolate chips into their muffins. And my answer is no, you can't.
They'll kill you.
Actually, you can. I just want you to try blueberries first because they're really good for you. All right, so we've got our things combined. Thank you for breaking it up. That's perfect. Let's go ahead and put the blueberries in there. And if you want to do the same for the blueberries, Grace, and just kind of mix them up in our dry ingredients. All right, I'm going to grab another bowl. And now we have our wet ingredients. So we're going to add a teaspoon. I'm going to grab my measuring spoons of vanilla. And in baked goods, vanilla just add a really nice depth of flavor to your baked goods. So a teaspoon of vanilla. 1/3 cup of oil. This is just vegetable oil. And again, I'm going to get eye level to make sure my measurement is accurate. Perfect. The next ingredient that it calls for is 1.5 cups of buttermilk. So here's a good example of substitutions. I don't have buttermilk in my house. but I do have milk and plain yogurt. So not Greek, but plain yogurt. So I have mixed together half a cup of milk and 1 cup of plain yogurt. So that's what I'm going to use. Use my spatula to scrape it all out. Okay. So now we are going to add our wet ingredients to our dry ingredients. And then Grace is going to combine these very gently. So when you stir your muffins, I want you to be gentle. Unlike bread, where we work our batter, we work our dough to build up gluten, we don't want to do that with our muffins. The secret to a soft and tender muffin is to mix it very carefully. So Grace is just going to gently mix this until she doesn't see any dry anymore. Once all the dry flour is gone, she's going to just stop. All right? So she's going to do that over there. While she is working on that, I want to talk to you about 2 ingredients that we're using today, baking soda and baking powder. Now, these might look really common to you. You might think baking soda, baking powder, no big deal. But actually, these 2 ingredients revolutionized modern baking, and they make it possible for you to have a birthday cake every year. So these 2 ingredients are what we call leavening agents. A leavener is something that we add to baked goods to help your baked goods be light and fluffy and to rise. There are 3 basic types of leaveners: yeast, steam, and then chemical leaveners like these 2, baking powder and baking soda. So for centuries, for millennia, the leavening agent that most of us had to use was yeast. But unlike modern yeast today, which is really dependable, we can really count on it to work, centuries ago, yeast was not dependable. You often had to grow it yourself. It was really hard to keep alive, and it could be damaged by temperature and environment, so you couldn't count on it to work really well. But in the 19th century, we have the introduction of baking soda. So baking soda is also called sodium bicarbonate, and it is a salt. And it's a salt that when you put it together with an acid, it creates carbon dioxide. So what is an acid? An acid is something like lemon juice or buttermilk, yogurt, or vinegar. I love that part. So you can see all that great carbon dioxide. Baking powder takes it 1 step further. Rather than having to add my own acid to this, there is acid included in my baking powder. So here into my container, I have both baking soda plus an activating agent. And in my container, they're inert. Inert means that they are chemically inactive. Baking powder is often called double acting for 2 reasons. One is that when we add liquid, it's going to react, they're going to activate each other, we're going to get 1 burst of carbon dioxide, and then later when we put our muffins into the oven, the heat is going to cause a 2nd burst of carbon dioxide, so that's why we call it double acting. All right, so let's go ahead and see how Grace is doing. I can get these out of the way over here. And I think you're good. I think that looks really good. You want to grab the muffin tins over there? Sometimes your batter is going to be really purple and blue, and that's fine. All right, so we're going to put our muffins into a muffin tin. I like to use papers because it helps to keep it clean. Even though I have papers, I still give it a light spray with cooking spray. When you spray your pan with cooking spray, I want you to do it over your sink so that you don't get any on the floor and you accidentally slip. If you didn't want to use muffin tins, you could also use a loaf pan, which would be just fine. So we're going to scoop these in. So Grace is using one of my favorite tools, which is our scoop. Let me see if I can line this up so you can see it a little bit better. What if I did this, Grace? Is that good? Yeah. Okay. And so she's just going to put a little bit into each cup, and she might go back just till it's all evenly distributed. And I'm just going to use a spoon. I'm going to help you. If you choose to use a loaf pan, it's going to take a little bit longer to bake. Our muffins are going to take probably 18 to 20 minutes, but a loaf pan is going to be closer to an hour. One nice thing about both muffins and a loaf is after you bake these, if you wanted to save some, or you didn't want to eat them all right away, you could freeze them. Let them cool off all the way, wrap them tightly in plastic, and stick them in the freezer. All right, we'll be right back after we're done finishing our muffin tins. So the timer has gone off. It's been about 20 minutes. I'm gonna take the muffins out. So this is something that's great for a grown-up to do because I don't want anyone to burn themselves. We're gonna check it to make sure it's ready. So I'm just gonna take a toothpick and I'm gonna push it not through a blueberry, but through another part of the muffin. And you see it comes out clean. This is one I did earlier and it has a lot of batter stuck on it, but this one is much cleaner. So this is how we know our muffins are done. So it is tempting to jump into these right away and eat them, but you want to let them cool off a little bit. This is a wonderful recipe. It's one of my favorites. It's blueberries, whole grains, and science. It makes me so happy. I hope that you enjoy this. I hope you had fun baking today. Please join us next week when we bake again. Thank you.